Welcome to the Modern Working Environments. I'm really happy to be here today and to tell you something about, as it says, from science to practice. So what are the scientific insights about modern working places right now, and what are the practical things we actually do in a municipality right now and transform ourselves? So first, a little kick-off to my person. I'm a CDO at the municipality at the county of Lüneburg, since May last year. And I'm also coming from the science perspective. So what I did in the past, I did actually my PhD about digital transformation strategies and was looking at different points about how do I actually strategize on an organizational level and on an individual level. This year we conducted, because it's still a hobby of me, we conducted a new study about modern working environments in municipalities. And today I'm really, really happy to show you some results of our study. First of all, I saw it yesterday. Hang on, do someone know this movie actually? Kingsman? Yeah, awesome. I always like to start with this one as when we're thinking about COVID-19, and I know we will hear something about this later at 12 as well, actually transformed our way of how we worked a lot. And looking at how it could be in the future, something like this is already developed and it's getting started. So when we are talking about digital transformation and we are looking at movies like Star Wars, James Bond or Kingsman, you will see something like this later on. We are always having this problem about digital what? Everyone is talking about digital transformation. In German, we always say Digitalisierung, but what is actually behind those definitions? Like, what does it really mean? And in science or in the previous literature, we are deciding between three different levels. So first of all, we have the digitization. This is the technical infrastructure we are looking at. So do we have all the systems we can actually work with? In the second part, we have digitalization, right here. That's the part where we actually look at the processes. So what processes do we have? How can we optimize them? And then we have the digital transformation, where we are actually looking at the societal change. So what does information systems do with ourselves? So when we're talking about Digitalisierung in German or digitalization, we actually are talking about the digital transformation, and we're looking what does technology actually do with us. The next definition I want to get fast through with is digital transformation strategies. We all know the common organizational strategies we use for companies, for municipalities, and the IT strategies. Usually they were all divided. So we know where do we want to go with our company in the next 5 to 10 years. And we knew, well, what IT infrastructure do we need for this? But what is now happening with having information systems like mobile devices hands-on to us all the time to work with, we actually use digital transformation strategies which join the purpose of our organizational company strategy. So we see a fusion of our organizational strategy and IT strategy when we're talking about digital transformation strategies. In my PhD, I already told, I'm looked at how does this look like. It was a phenomenon pretty new when we talked about it in 2018, 2019. Nowadays, everyone is talking about digital transformation strategies. But we asked ourselves, especially for municipalities who are always said to be a little bit slower and a little bit behind, how does it look at? And we saw that we have different structural features we're looking at when we talk about strategies. When you see a normal company strategy, you look at an organizational strategy, you always see a kind of structure you are inhabited. It's like the strategy formulation. So you have different parts, like a vision, you have your aims, you're communicating your goals, your fields of action, where you want to look at. And those strategies are always aligned to some other strategies when we look at municipalities. So we have this strategic alignment, different parts, where we see, well, what is the ministry doing? And we are referring to, okay, well, if they say we need to go right or left, we actually will adapt to this. So we have different structural features when we talk about digital transformation strategies. A municipality, for example, has to look at. The next step, transformation processes always have a couple of levels they are looking at. And for today, we're looking at the organization and the individual level. So what do they do with an organization and what do they do with an individual? Looking at the organizational level, and I told you there will be a little bit Star Wars, James Bond, and Kingsman, talking about BB-8, we are seeing here an artificial intelligence who is thinking and acting on responses towards a name or a goal, like really thinking human-like, putting out some instruments, like saying yes or no and highlighting different parts. So how do we get there on an organizational level? So how can we get actually the capabilities to work with different technologies like AI or like a BB-8? And from science, we found some factors which enhance actually the capability to work with AI, called AI capability. We saw, and I marked them for you, organizational innovativeness. So the innovativeness of an organization, of a company, is really, really important to actually enhance the use or the capability to get the knowledge to work with AI. So am I interested and am I innovative? It's much easier actually go around with it. I know it sounds actually pretty common, but there are still some thoughts about it, because when we look further at, well, coming from a municipality, we have perceived government pressure, which helps always a lot, and the incentiveness. So if I'm getting something for doing something really cool, that's something I will turn on and I will get AI going. But what is always really not helping, which we saw in our studies, is the regulatory support. So if, for example, the ministry is saying, well, for a municipality, you need to do it like this, like this, like this, and you have different regulatory norms you have to look at, that's actually something which really puts your innovativeness down. So you won't get this fast. So in some points, having restrictions or having too much guidelines actually doesn't bring you as far as you want to be. When we are thinking about using AI or building up capabilities for different technologies, we are always looking at different competences we need for this. This is another study we completed, and I already told some of you. How do we get there? How can we get digital competences in our organizations? And we found there are different, today in the slide, I show you features you can actually get to build up competences. It's we have different forms here which are common new ways of learning in organizations. We see from science that there's a huge amount of people who actually want to learn by doing, by talking to others, learning from others. It's not as much the ways we knew, like, you get someone invited, they are talking about it. It's more the part of actually doing and having the possibility to get to knowledge anytime, anywhere you are, from every point of direction to a lot of resources. So talking about organizations and especially municipalities, it's always hard, for example, just to get an account for YouTube and saving the quality for employees when they have a quick question they want to look at or some topics they want to get fast into. So how do we work around this is a huge topic we're going later on. But just for this, there are different ways of how we can get digital competences into our organizations. The next part, we need the surroundings for this. So when we're looking at organizations, especially municipalities, getting there is something of, well, we need those standards, like we need the rooms for it, we need the culture, we need tools. But we also have to look at the purpose. And this is something we are going on to now. Because when we are having the organization level, the digital transformation always starts with the individual, so ourselves. We use technology all the time. And when we look at the individual level, we are always looking at the separation or integration of work and private lives. So another part we are always thinking about when we are talking about modern working places and about the strategies and individual users, it's the way of how we cope with our information technology. And right now, I see we have always our smartphones, our tablets, our laptops on. But how do you cope with having, this availability all the time? What are your own strategies? And we found some strategies like using a boundary app or automatic notifications, or who is actually pushing their mails? Do you have a pull or push mechanism? So do you get your mails anytime you just get one, or did you decide, I look up my mails on my own? Who does look their mails up? Okay, awesome. Because this is a decision you undertook yourself to do this work-life balance conflict, to look at where do I want to work, when do I want to work, and how do I cope with my private lives. Another part when we talk about modern working places on an individual level, and that's the purpose-driven work. From a scientific level, we have 4 different components. It's really psychological driven, the study. We looked at, well, what does actually give our work a meaning? So what does the individual say gives a meaning to our work? 4 components. The first one we see here, it's the way of how are we able to actually design our own day. And we talk about autonomy. So do you have the autonomy? Can you actually decide where you want to work, when you want to work? What IT do you want to use for work? And also, here again, the part of competences. What competences do I need to fulfill my work? And am I able to choose how and where to get those competences to fulfill my working tasks? The next part is, how am I able to actually take part in decisions in my organization, and what do they result in for the organization, for the society, or for something bigger? When we think about COVID, and well, coming from a municipality, I'm coming from science, we have a really, really huge impact when we talk about the health departments in municipalities, what they did during COVID. And those employees, when you talk to them, when you ask them, they say, well, you know, we had such a big impact on society, and this is something which gives my work a really big meaning, and this is my purpose, to do something good for the society. The third part is authenticity. So this is the point where someone asks themselves, do my colleagues, for example, do my colleagues see me and my work as I do it myself? And if there's a gap, we actually need to work with our colleagues on this gap to have the possibility to work in our own authenticity way. The next part is identification. So when we are talking about the purpose of work or the meaning of work someone gives to their own daily working tasks, it's about the identification. Do I really have an identification with the values of my organization? And do I have an identification with my team I'm working in? And what we found, which is really important in municipalities, for example, is actually the combination of having a friendship at work. So having friends at work is a huge part in how employees actually give their meaning a work. I think that's really, really exciting when we talk about the work-life balance part. So how do I combine my work? And when we talk about the demographic changes, when we see, for example, Statistisches Bundesamt, in municipalities we have the huge challenge that in the next 10 to 15 years, half of our colleagues will be gone because they retire. And those are only the ones who are retiring. Those are not the ones who might get sick as well. So we always have this gray number spot where we know, okay, there actually will be more gone and earlier than we hope. And this is something where the purpose of work and the meaning of work is really important to actually set standards to be able to keep working and to get the technologies working and to get the organization still forward. So from science to practice, how does this work? Today I'm also able to show you how we did this in the municipality in the county of Lüneburg. I know I'm only there for a year and a couple of months, but what I did first is actually I looked at the different structures we've got. And I was looking at, well, what are, the gears I can have and I can change around and I can adjust to, take the digital transformation to the next level. And as we are looking today at the modern working places, it's the individual digital transformation. So it's our employees, our colleagues who are really in the center of attention at this point. And I told you, James Bond. So when we always see these ways of how we can work in a modern way, we have those movies we are always looking at. And when you look at municipalities, some might say, they will never be able to do this. But that's not the way. So we actually asked ourselves, if we know what we actually can do and what's happening already, and we look at our different processes and then our daily working areas, how do we get there and how actually do we want to work so that this is actually not happening? So having this in mind, coming from science, I was asking my colleagues actually on, well, how is your daily working life going? What do you want to change? How do you want to work in your future? And we decided that we look, first of all, that's what you always do, you look at best practices, so who did what. From, unfortunately, this is the PDF and the PowerPoint, they would come up in a slower way. So in the background, you see like examples from different organizations near Hamburg, like Otto, who actually introduced modern working places already. But we also have some best practices in the municipality area who did a great job there as well. But when you see those best practices and when you look at different companies, you always have this type of, well, one size does not fit all. So you can't just go there and put the same over your own municipality and say, okay, we work like this around. No, one size does not fit all. So you have to talk and you have to look at your own employees, at your own colleagues and see what do they want, how do they want to get there. We actually designed a project for the whole county of Lüneburg. We're asking what is in it. I always like to start with the why. Do you know Simon Sinek and the Golden Circle? Always start with the why. Why are we doing things? Because in municipalities, we often have this thing of when you go there and ask and want to do changes, they are like, well, I did this now for 25 years. I do not want to change my processes. I'm really into it. I know them by heart. Let's do this. So it's always, okay, what can you get there? And talking from the little child perspective, we have a couple of things which we, the buzzwords you always hear. You have the flexibility, you have the agility, work-life balance, and you needed to show them that it's actually working. From school, we know we are not allowed to look at others and we are not allowed to get the results from them and put them onto our own solutions. But in practice and today and nowadays working lives, we're actually allowed to. So we looked at how can we get there, looking at the best practices to gain trust from our employees, because trust is a really big issue when we look at modern working places where you can work from anywhere at any time. But we also saw, well, if we want to communicate and we want to be transparent, how do we do this? And we asked actually our colleagues from other organizations, how did you do this? And asked our employees, how do you want to communicate with each other in the future? So you know what's actually going on and happening. And having this around the whole municipality, so not only in one part and not one field, but doing this across like a culture change on the whole organization. We designed two projects. We had one focusing only on the mobile devices at work, so working anytime, anywhere. And we saw when we do things like this and when we get changes like this in a municipality who is, as I said, sometimes on the way of, oh, well, I did this 25 years, I do not want to change. We need something where they can see actually what does this change mean and how does this change look like? How can we work? So a point of place where you see how is work done today. And we designed a new building where we put into this activity-based working environment. So activity-based working, when I have a call, I go somewhere where I cannot be disturbed. When I want to read, I might go into a library. I have a working cafe. Something really new for municipalities, actually having a working cafe where you can chat with the other colleagues, meet them, get a little bit more introduced into what's up actually. We put in this building 3 different areas of our municipality. We've got the IT, the mobility service, and the standard traditional Ordnungsamt part. So this was actually quite interesting, having like this modern area of IT coming into the new building, and they were already with COVID totally into working from anywhere at any time, and just where I am, I will start working. And traditional parts of our municipality who are still in this learning process of how does modern work actually work. And we saw this different activity-based working areas for meetings, for, getting a call, flex desk, where you actually share your office spaces. It's really interesting. We started this, we finished the design part in the start of the year. So our first colleagues moved in March. And now we can, half a year later, we can see how everything worked out and how they adjusted. And if you have questions later, I can talk about this a little bit more in detail. We saw that they first started to adjust and to use those spaces. And then if you imagine like having the different change curves, they actually started to be back on their own places, even though they are desks. We see already love there. A development which is often seen, it's quite interesting. It's still normally a flexibility desk, but the pictures of the family are coming back. So what we are doing right now is actually we're getting new teams, our teams from the organizational development, who are the first ones. Everything okay? Who are giving up their offices at all, which is something new in a municipality as well. Normally everyone is like having, okay, I have my desk, I have my own office, I will never ever give this away. But we actually started now with one team to do this, and they will go into the new building as well. And so we will see that there are not enough places for everyone at once. So those modern working areas need to be used, and the activity-based working environment will be getting started a lot more. So I'm really curious how this works. It's starting in September, October now, when the new office devices are there. So I hope I can tell you next year a little bit more about how this worked out. And that's actually what I want to finish with. We started this, and I know we are one of the first municipalities doing this, and it's still an experiment. So I wonder how this will turn out for next year. And for today, and I think I'm still on the time, I want to give to you the part of, having dynamic capabilities. So having an organization learning to adjust to all the different developments is really, really important. But what you are never allowed to forget is the mindset of the people. Because when we look at digital transformation, it always takes part with ourselves, so with the individual, because we are doing the digital transformation. So we need to think about our different areas of life where we actually can start with the transformation processes at all. And that's where you need to get your colleagues and your employees to, where do they want to go? What do they want? And then you see the purpose-driven work in the future. Thanks.